So I figured I'd start with the reason why I really wanted to make a lecture like this. And it really starts with the basic theory behind this entire theory behind this entire series. And it starts with this one basic idea. It starts with the fact that stories reveal something about our own selves. We we get so interested in these stories and movies, just fairy tale stories, things that we really loved as a kid. And I know a cynic is going to be sitting here asking the question as to, a story is just a story. Why do I have to attach any specific meaning or significance to it? And the only answer I would have to that is, why do we get so interested in them anyways? Right? Like, what is it that draws us towards them in the first place? Are they just pure fantasy, or does it seem like there needs to be something deeper for us to be interested in it? If you look across cultures, if you look across societies, the prevalence of stories exists in every single one, across all cultures, across all time, if you look at humans. And we must ask ourselves, what is the actual benefit of stories? And it seems pretty obvious that the answer has to do with meaning. The answer has to do with stories teach us how to create a world around us that is better and how to manage ourselves in this world. And that is why I wrote this book right here. And this is the book that I just published. It's called Break Your Bad Habits in 150 Pages, A Hero's Journey. And it is on Amazon if you are interested. But the entire reason that I wrote the book is because I believe that there are life lessons that exist within these movies. And whether or not we know it, we learn from them anyways. Like, why do you think? So for Frozen 2, for example, there was a lecture series or a documentary, the docuseries that came out. It was 6 parts of Frozen 2 and how the directors were really going and making Frozen 2. I suggest you check it out on Disney Plus. It's actually very good. And what they say is, a lot of the time that they're spending on making this movie is in boardrooms where they're discussing the meaning behind the movie. What is the meaning? What are we trying to convey to these kids? What is the lesson? Because, after all, this is Frozen 2. This is a movie for young teenagers, we could say, probably like 10 to 15 around. And they're so concerned in this docuseries with the meaning behind the story. And that begs the question, in their underlying assumption, are they assuming that people are going to learn from this movie, whether consciously or unconsciously? And the answer is obviously yes. So it really seems that even though we might not consciously extract these lessons from the movie, we're extracting them anyways, and we're still using them in our daily lives because the makers of the movie are so concerned with the meaning behind it. And it's my job here is to sit here and try to extract out as many lessons as possible. So instead of just having them unconsciously, influence your actions and your decisions, I'd rather them be conscious. I'd rather you completely understand the lessons that you're learning, and then from there be able to implement them in your own life. And I think that the reason why I chose Frozen 2, why am I choosing Frozen 2? This this movie that's supposed to be for, teenage girls is probably the target demographic. I watched this movie and it's so powerful, and it's got so many lessons within it. And I think that it really will reveal something about all of us, all of like everyone, and it will reveal something about our own selves. So I think the greatest start to this movie is, or at least to this series, is the same way that they started the movie, is that they start with the backstory. So it starts with not the story of Elsa. It starts not with the story of Anna, the 2 main characters. It starts with the story of the father. And this father is incredibly, incredibly interesting in the fact that, we all have fathers, right? We all have fathers, and we all have a destiny to sort of live up to. And this movie really starts with the destiny that Elsa and Anna are supposed to live up to. So first, we must take it back to Frozen 1. In Frozen 1, I'll give you just a brief synopsis, in terms of the meaning behind it. The father told Elsa the whole time, right? She was struggling to control her ice powers, right? And the story was really about trying to give self-control to Elsa, this young child who's really trying to control her ice powers, or you could say all these biological urges that we have, whether it be, impulses or anything like that. So she's trying to control her ice powers, and her dad comes down and she says the words, conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. And that was sort of the theme that kind of that pervade throughout the entire movie. And we could say that's wrong, right? We could sort of kind of agree that that's wrong. Essentially, what he was trying to tell her was to take her feelings, emotions, urges, all these things, and throw them into a mental closet, a mental space that that doesn't get, that sort of is just like being pushed to the side. And it's a bad idea, right? Because what ends up happening is you keep trying to fill up that closet because the closet keeps trying to come back at you, and the urges keep coming, and you keep trying to fill up the closet, and eventually the closet, overfills and takes over your conscious mind. And that's a large theory behind what anxiety is. Anxiety is suppressing and suppressing and suppressing your feelings until you hit the point where you can't suppress them anymore. They're so strong, they're so prevalent that you can't just keep pushing them down anymore. And then you have anxiety attacks, etc. So this is what the father tells her. He tells her, conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. And this is a strong symbol of tradition. The Christian tradition that we have in our society. I mean, you could really relate this to sex. Sex is something that's really powerful in this. As a metaphor, we obviously have in the old traditions, they preach abstinence, they preach no sex before marriage, all these things. And we have sort of discovered in our new age that that's not really the right way of going at it. Actually, 88% of people who pledge to commit to abstinence actually fail. So it seems like, again, that's one of those things. You're concealing, don't feeling, trying to push away your emotions. And that makes the father almost God, right? Or the symbol of the tyrannical aspect of God, right? The controlling, restrictive aspect of God. And he gives this lesson to his daughter, and his daughter in the previous movie has to unlearn what she has learned, right? What she has learned from her father. And throughout the movie, he has been this concealed, this restrictive power. So in this movie, in this intro, we sort of figure out why he's like that. And I think it's something that's really interesting. We start to figure out. So he starts with his backstory, and it's really his encounter with spirituality. You'll see as it goes across. So the first thing that he does is he explains how he and, how Arendelle is we'll call them the civilized people, right? Civilized. And they meet up they're the ones on the right, and they meet up with the people on the left who are known as the Northuldrans. The Northuldrans are what we think of as Native Americans, as primitive tribes, but not really primitive. They're more spiritual, right? We see them as a spiritual aspect. So the man on the right who's shaking the hand of the Northuldran, he is Elsa's dad's father, so Elsa's grandfather. And really what this is showing is we're feeling in the beginning there's some unity between the spiritual aspect of society, which is the Northuldrans, the Native Americans, and the developed aspects of society. Things are actually going well. We can imagine this. I'm going to go back to it. Stories reveal something about our own selves. So if we're going to say, what does this mean for us? We're going to say that this is inside of our brain, the union between our conscious self, we could say the part that you're experiencing right now, just the fact that you are conscious and you are looking around, and the unconscious, the thing that, these urges, these feelings, these emotions that we have inside of ourselves, and that we, sometimes maybe we try to repress it, but sometimes we actually try to integrate them. And this is the story of being able to integrate, being one with ourselves and uniting the consciousness and the unconsciousness. So getting back to the story, the dad the dad he's a young boy in this case, and what he does is he takes a trip down to this enchanted forest with where the Northuldrans live, and these Northuldrans seem like, look, they're walking on water essentially, so they are very one with the earth. You know, their whole mantra is that they only listen to what the earth tells them, and that really shows that they are really in touch with their spiritual side. Maybe they don't have the developed nature that we have, or that the Arendelians have, but at the same time they are developed spiritually, and they live a good life. You know, things are actually going very, very well, and there's actually unity between the Arendelians and the Northuldrans. And what this really symbolizes for the father himself is it symbolizes unity within his mind. You know, it seems like he himself is going on a spiritual journey. You know, in his youth, you could say he is spiritual as well as conscious, and that is what we are as adolescents. You know, we are interested in stories, which we could call somewhat spiritual, and at the same time we are sort of growing up trying to figure out what we are in life, and it's sort of like a spiritual journey, you know. And so then what later happens is, in this enchanted forest, the Northuldrans and the Arendelians get into a fight, and brutal battle. You know, things really aren't going that well, and we could call this, in a spiritual sense, we could call it resistance. We could call it, you know, anybody who goes on you could see it as there's an eternal debate as to, you know, for a child who is struggling to figure out what he wants to do in life. You know, I think we all struggle with this at one point. There is a debate between the career that we want to go into and the career that we're supposed to go into. So there's the debate between, do you want to be the lawyer, doctor, accountant, finance guy, or do you want to be, you know, the artist, creator, you know, teacher, doctor, if you really want to be a doctor, you know, like there's this eternal debate between where you should go and where you want to go. And that in and of itself is a spiritual journey. It's like, do you want to follow your spirits, or do you want to follow society? And you really, you know, trying to mend the two, you know, the unity is exactly what we're looking for. But here for the father, he clearly doesn't have that, because there's such a fight between it. And that's exactly what resistance is. So what they're doing right here is they're destroying the peace, they're destroying the unity between the spiritual side of the self and the conscious side of the self, you know, the developed side. And yeah, so we could say, you know, the father here is describing his own hero's journey, his journey with spirituality, the journey that Elsa is eventually going to go on. And he failed. And he failed because now they're fighting. And after that, what happens is there is a fog that comes over the forest. And I really like the idea of a fog coming over the forest. So therefore, the meaning of this enchanted forest, obviously, since it's the place where Northuldrans live, it is the place of spirituality, right? This forest is the place of journeying within yourself and going on this spiritual journey. You know, it's such a powerful thing, because that's where all these miracles are happening, where people are walking on water. And the idea of a fog coming over is very similar to a cloud coming over, and it's almost as if the phrase, you know, clouding your judgment is actually being used literally here. What they're doing is saying the spiritual center, this enchanted forest, this beautiful forest, actually now has a cloud coming over it. So now the father is clouded in his judgment. He is completely following the consciousness of the Arendelians, but at the same time, he is completely clouded in his spiritual side. And now we could sort of understand the why when he talks to his daughter, he says, conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. You know, there's actually a reason behind it. And it's because his consciousness, you could say, his rational mind was saying, it is smart for you to just deny your feelings, to throw them into a closet, you know, to keep using that metaphor. But at the same time, it doesn't cause unity between the feelings, emotions, urges side of ourselves and the rational side of ourselves. And Elsa really struggled with that throughout her whole life when she's struggling with the self-control. And exactly what happens is, she kept shoving this stuff into her closet because that's what her father was telling her to do. And it was unsuccessful. So we could say that there's actually a reason behind his flawed advice, you could say, and it's because his judgment was clouded, just like the spiritual center of this entire movie is clouded. So then he ends his story, and he advises Elsa not to worry about the forest, and he says the forest could be dangerous, and you should probably stay away from it, and that is the lesson that I think we all have learned if we know anybody who is incredibly rational. If somebody asks you, do you want to be, we'll go with the same analogy, you want to be a lawyer, doctor, accountant, or do you want to follow your dreams? If you were asked, why do you want to follow your dreams? The person would tell you that's dangerous, right? The rational person would say that is too dangerous because there are, you could not have enough money. You could, maybe you're too naive. Maybe there are all these problems that are going on, and maybe that's true. Maybe there's a huge possibility that is true, but following your dreams is somewhat naive, isn't it? It's incredibly naive, really going through and doing something that, let's say, follows your heart is not following your brain. If you're following your heart, you're not following your brain, and therefore you are doing something that's irrational. So the father is actually somewhat right when he says, don't worry about the forest. The forest is dangerous. Spirituality is dangerous. But at the same time, that's where your heart lies, right? That's where your spirit lies, and that's where spirituality is. So it seems, and this is what the critiques of the people who are not rational, the people who are spiritual will say about the rational people. They would say that they fear the unknown, right? They fear what lies in the forest. They fear spirituality because it is so unknown. It is so vast. It is like, what are these feelings, emotions, urges? We have no idea what they are, and that's why anxiety boils up. It's like, for you to really understand your emotions, feelings, and urges, you really have to dig deep, and that's dangerous. That's a dangerous thing, and we will find that throughout the movie. Let's see, and this is a very good way of, they told the entire father story and how it relates to Elsa in just one beautiful story, and I think that's really, really solid. All right, so the next thing. So now we're done with the father. One thing that I really like to use as a metric for how people are doing throughout the movie is using this idea of a circle, right? Because whenever we think of the self, you can see the self right over here. Whenever you think of the self is yourself, your core. We always talk about finding this sort of center, right? This sort of spiritual center. And Carl Jung is one of a strong influence of mine, and he's a psychoanalyst who believes that the circle is one of the most valuable shapes to really understand life, in its entirety, and the fact that there is a center, and at the same time, every single point around the center is equal, right? If you go left, right, up, down, it's going to be equal throughout all of them, as opposed to like a square. So I like to use the circle to really find the spiritual center, and we could really track, in Frozen 1, we could track Elsa and how close she was to her center. So, for example, 1 second. Okay, we're back. So, for example, now, if we look at Elsa throughout her journey in the beginning, right? In the beginning, this is the conceal, don't feel part, right? They lock her in her room and tell her, figure out how to control your powers, or not. You are, and when you're going to come out when you control your powers. This is the conceal, don't feel. Throw all your emotions in the closet, and clearly it's not working out too well because she's struggling, right? She's really struggling. So we're back, and we are going back to our depiction of the self. And like I said before, Carl Jung is really known for his depiction of the circle as a self, and that is the center of existence. So, or at least the center of your being, right? The spiritual core. And the way that we look at it is we could look at Frozen 1. You know, we could track Elsa throughout her journey through herself. And right here, we start with Elsa in Frozen 1. This is her after her father says, conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. And this right here is exactly what is wrong with that idea of strict rationality. Just sort of push it down into this closet. And what ends up happening is they say, stay in your room until you figure out your ice powers. The only problem is that is not the effective way of doing it. The effective way of controlling your issues, we could say, or just controlling your feelings, emotions, temptations, all these things, is not to just sit there and figure it out. It's this sort of, you can imagine a great solution for children, right? Children have these feelings. They are pure feelings, emotions, and temptations and impulses. That's all that they are. And the solution for that is not to make them sit in their room and figure it out. The solution for them is to go play, to go play with other kids and to sort of, test, essentially. Like, let's say that you have a relatively aggressive child, and he's very, very aggressive. He will punch kids, he will kick kids, and all these things. He will learn eventually, or hopefully, that after he punches a kid, the kid doesn't like him, and then he doesn't have any friends. And eventually, through this experience, through this process, he is able to control his aggression because he realizes, I want friends, therefore I'm going to control my aggression. For Elsa, if you just take her and you tell her, control your powers, don't do it through experience, just kind of learn to control them, then you're going to have this experience where she's literally sitting in her room, clearly unable to control her ice powers because her whole room is ice, and she's feeling shameful. She's unable to control these powers, and she doesn't know how to fix it. If we were to look at herself, how close she is to herself, she's all the way in the top right. She's so far away from her center that she's pure rationality and pure. Let's say she's just going with the wrong method. And then you have the experience of Let It Go. Let It Go is obviously the song that everybody knows, and the meaning behind it is somewhat unclear. It's really, really unclear, but it's really beautiful at the same time. If you were to look at Let It Go, she says, let's give some lyrics. It says, it's time to see what I can do, to test the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. Right? So this idea of testing the limits and break through, that's exactly what children do when they are learning, how to behave in a social environment. And that's exactly what she's doing here. The problem is she's not doing the right thing. So for example, she goes to Let It Go, and you could watch later in the movie, in Frozen, she's still unable to control her ice powers. It's because she's been testing, but she's still testing by herself. She isolates herself in a castle, and she still tests wrong. But at the same time, she's doing better. So she's actually closer to the self, right? So obviously, now that she is really testing, she's really, adopting this environment of, okay, I'm not going to listen to my parents. I'm going to do essentially what children do, follow your instinct to play. She's getting closer to the self. One thing that happens later in the movie, which I find is just incredibly interesting, is that she ends up learning how to control herself through her sister. There's a sort of dynamic play that sort of goes along. And this is exactly what she learns in Frozen 2, which I find also incredibly interesting. There's this idea which I actually really want to put forth. It's in Friedrich Nietzsche. He talks about this idea called the three metamorphoses of the self, or the three changes of the self, the three ways that humans evolve. And if you're going to live a good life, you're going to go through these three evolutions. So metamorphoses. So he says, first you start as a camel, then you move to a lion, and then you transform into a child. Now, we have no idea what that means, so let me explain. At first, you are a camel. What is the job of a camel? A camel is is its purpose is to carry things. So that is the equivalent of us as children. As children, we are a camel and we go on our knees, and what we tell everybody is to put a load on me. Give me knowledge, give me rules, give me structure, give me all these things, because I am dependent. I cannot handle the world by myself up until, let's say, the age of 15 at least. So we are a camel and we're saying, put a load on me. This is also obedience. But then what happens is, once we carry enough load, once we really understand the rules, the structure of society, then we walk into the woods. We take the stuff on our back and we transform into a lion. A lion, the job of him is to fight a dragon. And this dragon is in the woods, obviously, and it is covered in gold. It is a gold dragon. And on each scale of the dragon, it says, thou shall, thou shall, thou shall, right? And that's a big reference to the Ten Commandments, right? Thou shall, thou shall, thou shall. It's rules, right? It's structures. And the thing is, you must fight those rules, right? You must fight this dragon. So the meaning behind it is, sure, you might have been given these rules. You might have been a camel in the beginning, taking on all these rules, but eventually you're going to realize that some of those rules are wrong, right? So for example, Elsa was given the rule, conceal, don't feel. And we have been given that our entire lives. Hey, listen, you have this emotion, you want to go play, right? No, you're 6 years old. Go sit in a room and learn for 7 hours a day as a first grader, right? We have these impulses, and eventually maybe we learn to go against them, right? To go against these rules and actually follow our impulses. Then, as a lion, we're fighting our dragon, and that's exactly what Elsa's doing here. She's taking the rules, the thou shall, this dragon here, and she's fighting it. She's saying, listen. This dragon might be covered in gold. It might be sort of like a god image, right? Like Nietzsche actually said, he goes, this dragon, some of us revere this dragon as a god because of its goldness, because it looks so nice. And, you can think of Christianity as that. You can think of a father as that idea. And, but eventually you must take those rules and you must realize that those rules don't specifically apply to you, and you must break some of them. Then the third step so he says most people struggle there. Most people don't end up breaking the rules, and they just follow the dragon. They just keep the societal rules. The third step in somebody who wants to have a good life is they become a child. So they walk out of the forest as a lion and they become a child. The symbolism of a child is because it has two factors that are really important. One, it is imaginative, and two, it is living in its own little world. So when we think of children, right, let's think of a 7-year-old child. They play, they live in fantasy, they watch these crazy movies and be inspired by them. And we don't really understand why, but at the same time we do. They are inspired by them. So it's almost as if they're in their own little world. And the truth is, if you're going to break the societal rules like Elsa does, she is in her own little world. She is separating herself from society, and that's why she lives in the castle. But it's really important that you do separate from society, because you're breaking the rules. If you want to follow the rules, you stay with society. But if you don't, you really have to be in your own little world. The second part is you have to be imaginative, because the problem is when Elsa breaks this rule, when she says she's going to let it go, the only thing is she doesn't have a better plan. She just says, I don't like the rule that was in the past, right? She tears down the structure that was given to her, but she doesn't rebuild it with something else. She just lets it die. And Nietzsche says that's important, because what it gives you when you fight that dragon, it gives you freedom to create new rules, freedom to create new structures, to really be imaginative like a child, and that's why he wants a child, because a child is going to go to the places where the adult won't go. The mature mind won't dream. The mature mind won't imagine a new world and create new systems. And the job of Elsa and the job of the child in the third phase is that they must live in their own little world, and at the same time, they must imagine new rules, new systems. Steve Jobs had a great quote. It was, if you were to imagine, the most shocking realization that you could possibly have is that our world, the structure of our world, everything that you see in your world was created by someone no smarter than you. And And I find that to be really powerful because it's really true. You know, it's all about being able to embrace what we could call a hero's mindset, but being able to embrace something powerful that this child within you, this imaginative version within you, that most people just say, you know what, I'm just going to follow the set rules. So let's go back to Frozen 2. That is, so we just made it through the dad's character arc in his entire story, and then Elsa through the first movie. Now, we sort of need to make it through the mother herself. The mother is actually she sings this lullaby that essentially sets up the entire movie. This lullaby is actually it was the reason why I like this movie, because it's so powerful. And so first she starts off by explaining this thing called Atahallan. Atahallan is this place, this mystical place. We could think of it as a myth. And she says it's supposed to hold all the answers about the past. And it's mystical. You know, it's something that people don't really believe in, but some people do believe in. And I really want to take us through what Atahallan is, and to really set up what it could be, you know. So in this lullaby, she goes, in her waters, deep and true, lie the answers and a path for you. Dive down deep into her sound, or not too far, or you'll be drowned. And she also says, for in this river all is found. So she's really saying that this is a powerful place. This place is, you know, something deep, and it's inside of, you know, sort of it's far beyond the range of where we'd think, you know, the normal range of experience lies. But here's the thing. Here lies the answers and a path for you. So what she's really describing here is a journey within the self. You know, like we really try to think of, you know, trying to find your spirit, trying to find a spiritual place. And what she's really trying to describe here is going within yourself and finding, quote, the answers and a path for you. So we'll see that. You'll see that as it plays out. Let's see. Next part, yes, she will sing to those who will hear, and in her song all magic flows. But can you brave what you must fear? Can you face what the river knows? And Atahallan is a river, and really she's describing the spirit, right? Like, you know, most people, I think Nietzsche actually said this too, and I think this is a quite controversial statement, but it's interesting. He said most people are living as corpses. He said most people live a life already dead, and by the time that their body has died, their soul has already passed. And this is in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, by the way, great book. And what he means by that is most people have given up their soul. Most people have given up their spirit by the time that they've reached adulthood. You know, like you imagine, you know, again, like the lawyer doctor versus the maybe like astronaut, baseball player, like the things, you know, artists, like the things that you really want to do. Most people choose lawyer doctor. Most people choose security. Most people choose rationality, like the father did, you know, and their spirit dies along the process. And that's what he means by can you brave. That's what she means when she says, can you brave what you most fear? You know, fear is one of the most powerful drivers of our existence. And the biggest thing that we fear is the unknown. Think about it. If you want to be a lawyer, doctor, accountant, you are going for security, right? Financial security. If you want to be an artist, there's so much unknown that goes into it. You know, you have no idea where your next, you know, whether you're going to make a lot of money or a little money this year, the next 10 years. And that's what you most fear. We fear the unknown. There was a great quote in Batman. Batman Begins. The main villain, he says, we fear what we don't understand. And I think that's true. It's like if you don't have a full grasp on the world ahead of you or in front of you, then you're going to fear it because you have no idea what it's going to come from. It's like you're sitting in if you trace it back biologically or evolutionarily, it's like you're sitting in a dark wood. It's like, why do we fear the dark? Why do we fear the basement, a dark basement? Why do we run upstairs? You know, it's because it's unknown. We have no idea what goes on there. And we fear it. We fear it because something might jump out at us. You know, if we're in a dark woods, there might be an animal that jumps out at us. We fear the things that we don't understand, and that's why we crave the light. That's why we crave lighting. You know, hanging out during the day, things of that sort. So so you'll see she's gonna, to be able to overcome any sort of spiritual journey or to embrace one, you have to go into the unknown, and you'll find that a little bit later. So at the end of the so that was their childhood. That was Elsa's childhood. It was a story. You could tell the mother is singing them a lullaby. Obviously, in Frozen 1, the mother and the father eventually ended up dying. So now Elsa, we go to current day. She is the queen of Arendelle. She's the ruler, and she's sitting there thinking about the lullaby. And yeah, she's still thinking about it to this day, you know. And it's powerful. It's powerful. There's a very it's a very interesting archetype that they're really hitting here. That's what I find is super incredible. If you look at this and you're to also look at the story of Moana, I don't know if you've seen Moana, but I highly suggest it. It's actually very, very similar. Like the beginning of the movie of Moana, the beginning of Frozen 2 is almost exactly the same, which means you just found an archetype. Good job. So the beginning of Moana is her father says, you see that ocean over there? We stay on this island. Don't go out into the ocean. But then the grandmother, or the mother, right, said in Frozen 2 says, but there's something out there. Right, if you stay on this island, then you're not gonna find your true potential. You're gonna miss out on something, and Elsa and Moana, right, both have this infatuation with going out there. Right, it's like okay, staying in Arendelle or staying on this Moana island is good. So we are at the end. We are at the end of the song, and you can see Elsa's still thinking about it. So far, yeah, she's gotten the same story. It's really interesting. Like, you look at if we're trying to figure out, like, what are the archetypes that exist in Disney stories? If you look at the story of Moana, the stories are almost exactly the same. You know, essentially her father tells her not to venture out into the unknown, and this unknown is really what lies the truth, and, you know, her, we'll say, self, right? Her growth. And but at the same time, the stories that she's heard as a kid, these sort of myths, right? These sort of things that we don't know to be true, but they're kind of leading her in that direction. They're telling her to go. They're telling her that this is the place to go. And she's so infatuated it that she's really thinking about it as she's going older. This is the same story as Moana. And if we're to really think about what ends up happening, that means she really just needs to go. You know, if she really wants to pursue herself, she needs to even just try it, because if she doesn't try it, then she's never going to explore deeper into herself. So the next thing that happens is it really seems like, you know, Elsa, she gets called in, and she accidentally, brings in the railway with ice. And what really that means, and I think it's really funny, because the entire Frozen 1 was about Elsa trying to control her powers. So really, this whole scene right here I find is really significant. What it really says is, even though Elsa in Frozen 1, she made it through the entire movie, and at the end, the resolution was, I controlled my powers. You know, I really figured it out, and I now control my ice powers. She hasn't had it all figured out. She doesn't have it all figured out. She doesn't have full control. And that's really the truth of it all, is that some of these problems that we really struggle with are going to be lifetime problems. You think about the lifelong smoker, the lifelong person who's trying to quit eating unhealthy foods, social media, like all the addictions that we really develop, and all these bad habits, you could say. It's not one of those things where it's sort of like a one done. Like you figure it out, you finally quit smoking, you're never going to have to deal with it again. Actually, for smokers, it's very common for people to relapse 7 years later. And it's like, why would somebody relapse 7 years later? It's because that thing that makes them really want to keep smoking never goes away. It's something that sticks with you for forever. And that's why I always wonder why people say, or at least it almost seems like people believe that when they smoke and when they overeat and do all these things, they believe it to be harmless. But at the same time, it's more than harmless. It's worse than harm. It's very bad, actually, because what happens is once you develop this little tendency to want to smoke, it actually never goes away. Never goes away. And that's been proven true psychologically. I suggest you read the book The Power of Habit if you're actually interested in that. So then we move on to the other characters, and this is just it's really interesting to show, like things are going good right now. You can tell really with everything going on, the things are just going very well. They're sitting and they're just sort of hanging out. Things are kind of nice. You got Olaf and Anna, and right now they're in one of the greatest themes of the entire movie, and I actually really like this theme. It's called Some Things Never Change, or the debate is whether or not things change. Whether or not life constantly requires change, or life could actually stay the same. And I think this is a really, really interesting debate. So in this movie, you're going to watch as we sort of go out, Olaf really plays sort of like a developing child. He actually plays the role of sort of like the 12-year-old kid. And the whole purpose of that is because we are supposed to identify with some of the people in the movie, and the developers here, the directors really chose for Olaf to be that character. He's, the 12-year-old, 13-year-old children is what the movie is really, targeted for. And he is designed to for kids to really be like, oh, okay, I could see myself. Everybody's going on these crazy journeys, but I'm only a kid. I'm only 12 years old. So I'm going to be essentially just watching all the other superiors or people who are more developed really go through their hero's journey. What's really interesting is Anna here. So she's more of a superior. She's lived, they establish her as someone who's lived longer and therefore should be, Olaf said, you are older and thus all-knowing to Anna. And that's really what he sees her as, someone who's wiser and older. And they end up singing a song. It's called Some Things Never Change. And Anna has this belief that throughout life, in all of this, right now things are going good. And when things are going good, she has this tendency to believe that things will always go good. And you'll see it's incredibly, incredibly naive. I mean, if you look at it, you'll see that in your own life, things always change, right? Things never stay the same. And no matter what, one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard is, the only constant in the world is change, because at the same time, you're always getting older. You're always maturing. Your biological clock is always ticking towards death. And, that makes things always change. And obviously the world around you is not going to stay the same either. So it's funny because Olaf is looking up to Anna and saying, you are older and thus all-knowing, but therefore she's giving him the wrong advice. She's saying that some things never change, and you'll see the lesson, the lesson that we're really seeing throughout just the first 10 minutes, which is really sort of, I guess, underneath everything, is that, your authorities don't know everything. Right? Like, the father goes and tells Elsa, don't go in there, when she really should have gone in there. Anna tells Olaf that some things never change when she's really wrong. And I think that's a really powerful lesson. Really, it's really true. It's, oh my God, I'm sorry. Your authorities do not know everything. And you must really question their ideas. Actually, one of the greatest things that I actually really like in the Christian tradition is the word Israel. Israel is he was an angel, or no, he was a man who wrestled with God, and the word and he was a man, and his name wasn't Israel yet, but his name was Israel because he saw, it wasn't sure if it was an angel or if it was God himself, but he actually wrestled with him throughout the night. And the word Israel actually means he who wrestles with God. And that's a powerful lesson. It really says, a good Catholic, a good religious person is not somebody who blindly accepts the rules. It's someone who intellectually wrestles with God and challenges these conceptions that might be wrong. Like, obviously maybe God could be right, maybe the Bible could be right, but maybe our interpretations of it could be wrong. So always, the lesson here is always wrestle with the authority or God. So now you go back to Elsa, and Elsa is an interesting character. She contrasts directly with Anna. You know, right here, she's saying she's actually sort of in the right mindset. She's saying, hey, listen, I don't love change. Change is kind of scary, right? Like, why would, like, things are going well right now. I'm the queen of Arendelle, and things have kind of like settled down. So why would I want to go and change anymore? But the thing is, she realizes that change is necessary and that she must go through it. There's an interesting idea here that I really like, and it's very prominent in the self-help journey, the self-help community. It's all about accepting discomfort and being willing to being able to live in discomfort. And I like that because, you know, being comfortable means not wanting to see change. Right? Being comfortable is the exact opposite. It's like, you know, imagine being comfortable on a couch. If you're sitting on a couch, you don't want change. You love exactly where you are right now. You love to be relaxed. And the problem is, then you will never want to change. You'll never want to get up. You'll never want to do anything like that. So mental comfort is the same thing. It's why would you want to change? Why would you want to go out and explore the unknown? Why would you want to face your fears? Why would you want to go and start a new career if you're comfortable? You know, that's the biggest problem with being a lawyer and a doctor and an accountant. If you're miserable, if you're a miserable doctor, lawyer, or accountant, if you aren't happy and you want to change careers but you can't, the problem is you might be too comfortable. And if you're very, very comfortable, then you're missing out because things are going to change around you and you're going to be stuck behind. They also gave a nice little nationalist statement. I'm not going to say obviously, but this is an important point, that these lessons are universal. So not only does this idea apply to Elsa and her life, not only does it apply to our life, not only does it apply to the world around us and whether or not things change, this also applies to government. And it says, you know, they say, I promise you the Arendelle flag will always fly. And that's part of the some things never change. You know, they assume that the Arendelle flag will always be a constant. And it's just beyond true that things always change. So really, the Arendellian flag will not always fly. So now we get into Elsa's hero's journey. I actually get the thing that drew me to this movie was Elsa's hero's journey, just absolutely incredible. So what happens is she's sitting there, and it also happened while she was over here. She actually hears this sort of like a song that's really being sang to her, and all she does is just a constant ringing in her ear, but nobody else does. It's her individual call to adventure, and that's that. It was a great thing because you find that it keeps bothering her throughout the movie. So I think one of the greatest lessons in that is once you hear your calling, it doesn't leave you. It really doesn't, and actually, the movie Inception really, really does a great job at that. You know, there was a I don't know if you saw it. It's a very Christopher Nolan movie, but he's a director and he does a great job. What he does is they show one of the main characters, this girl, they show her, you know, the world of the unconscious and the world of dreams and being able to go into your unconscious and being able to go into your own dreams. And what happens is she leaves because she says it's scary, that it's weird, it doesn't make sense, you know, why would I want to pursue my spirit? This is so weird. And then the main character, the movie Leonardo DiCaprio, says, don't chase after her. She's already seen this new incredible world. She'll come back. There's no way she can live her life by just putting that away. She's eventually just going to come back, and that's what she does. There's actually Carl Jung. He's the one who essentially just created all these archetypes. He psychoanalyst. He would literally sit there, and there was this one lady who was being analyzed by him, and he got a little upfront with her. You know, she said, she asked Jung, she said, this was in a therapy session. She goes, why does everybody hate me? And then he came back and he says, why do you hate everybody? And she stormed out on him and left. And she said, you know, like, no more appointments. I'm done with Jung. I don't want to deal with his psychotherapy anymore. And about a year later, she was just sort of thinking about it. It was sitting on the back of her mind, and she sort of realized, she's like, wait a second, Jung is kind of right. Maybe he was right on this, and maybe I am a little too mean to everybody, and maybe that's the problem. And so she calls up Jung's office, and she says, hey, I would like to set up an appointment with Jung. And she said, she's like, when's your next appointment? And the receptionist told her, she said, actually, Mr. Jung said, he told me to give a little bit of scheduling for you in the future because he knew you'd be calling. And it's just really scary to see that Carl Jung, as well as the archetypes, they really understand that once you step into this world, once you step into the world of the unknown, that you'll eventually come back. Even if you deny it right away, you'll eventually come back because it's so powerful and it's such an influence on your brain. So then, you know, it keeps calling her, and she wakes up in the middle of the night. You know, it's really killing her, and it's just staying restless in her mind. And this is the beginning of the song. What is it? Oh, Into the Unknown, of course, right? This is the most popular song of the movie, and in the beginning, what she does is she rejects the unknown, obviously, because it's scary. It's you know, one of the biggest barriers that you'll see is we're fearful of it, right? Like this unknown, we have this tendency to get comfortable because comfort is nice. Comfort is wonderful. And to feel that we are stuck in some spot and that we don't have to work to change our surrounding actually feels really nice. But at the same time, she has this thing that's really calling her, this growth that is really calling her. And you see right here, she kind of taunts it. She gives one of those, like, what are you kind of doing to me? And it's a good, you know, I think they did a great job, the animators, right there. And the question is, why would you want to go on another adventure if things are going good right now? So what happens is she denies her hero's journey. It's the refusal of the call. And maybe I jumped the gun on the previous one, but that's exactly what it is, you know, like leaving for a year and then coming back and saying, oh my God, wait a second. This is actually real. This is actually real. But it starts with being able to refuse the call. She says the quote in the song. She goes, I've had my adventure. I don't need something new. I'm afraid of what I'm risking if I follow you into the unknown. And that's true, right? Like why if things are going well and you're comfortable right now, why would you want to go further into the future? It makes almost no sense. It really does. It makes almost no sense to do it, and it's a huge risk because obviously you're throwing yourself into chaos when you don't need to be. But at the same time, this movie is saying, and this is what mythology says in general, it says, when you stagnate, you slowly die. You imagine yourself, there are two paths that you could be on right now. You're here on a path, and you could keep growing. And eventually you could just keep growing throughout your entire life, or you'll be slowly decaying. Because the thing is, that idea of some things never change, the fact that you'll be flatlined throughout your whole life, that's not true, because you're constantly changing and morphing and well, either growing or dying. You know, there's a quote in Shawshank Redemption, get busy living or get busy dying. And I think that's so true for the soul. And so the thing is, if you stop growing, then you start dying. And the biological reason for this is really interesting. I was really thinking about this the other day. Imagine Elsa, who has gone on this adventure, right, which is Frozen 1. She went on this adventure and she learned a lot of lessons, right? As time goes on, she begins to form new habits. She begins to forget those lessons because we forget things over time. And she you know, things are constantly changing within her. She's constantly coming up with new theories about the world, and really she's gaining new experiences. So she's really morphing her ideas. And after a while, those lessons that she learned, and we'll say they're good lessons because usually if you're the hero of a story, then you learn some good lessons. She forgets the lessons, right? You forget them over time. You form new habits, maybe worse habits, and you are slowly dying. Therefore, you know, if you're not growing, if you're not making a conscious effort to keep growing, then those lessons that you learned, the good lessons in the past, are slowly dying out. And that is why it is either get busy living or get busy dying. That's good for now.
Stop sharing. And